This episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/Managing Madrid, which now has a Discord server. So if you become a patron, you get access to the Discord server where you can talk about Real Madrid's men's team, women's team, Castilla. You can talk about the Champions League, La Liga. You can discuss all of Managing Madrid's articles. You can discuss tactics, off-topic stuff, and everything you can possibly dream of with other Madridistas. It's a great family that we built over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. And the Discord is basically an extension of that. So sign up there. You get a ton of bonus content, and now the Discord server as well. If you're interested in our thoughts on the whole Cristiano Ronaldo thing, Lucas and I spent about half hour, I'd say, total of the 1 hour podcast answering questions on that and giving our reaction to it. That's, again, over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Coming up is a podcast long overdue with our friend Phil Kitro of TSFP and La Liga TV. Needs no introduction, and it was a really fun conversation. Always is with him. So kick back, enjoy, and here's Phil Kitro.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Managing Madrid Podcast. We have a very, very special guest on. It's been a long time. Actually, this is, I think, the second time Phil Kitro, the great Phil, has appeared on the Managing Madrid Podcast. By my count anyway. I could be wrong, but either way, it's been a long time. It was definitely before the pandemic. And after all this time, we got the man of the hour, the very busy man who was traveling between Barcelona and Madrid, working for La Liga TV, doing amazing things with TSFP, and we got him on the show. We struck gold. So, Phil, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Hey, Kiyan. Yeah, good to be here, man. I think it is the second time. The first one was a long time ago, a long time ago. I think while I was still working at Real Madrid TV. And now, a few years later, the world has changed. Things have changed, but, I'm still here, still in Spain. So, yeah, good to be here.
Well, you know me, there's no one more thrilled about you leaving Real Madrid TV than me, because I can think back to that episode we did a long time ago when you worked for Real Madrid TV, and I was like, what is Phil allowed to talk about? What can we scrape out of this? Let's get some journalism advice, favorite memories working for Real Madrid TV, all that stuff.
Yeah, there's some NDAs, so not everything could be fully disclosed. Listen, man, it was great. Like the Real Madrid TV, the English version of Real Madrid TV, which I think is just about still going, but barely. In the beginning, it was a really serious operation. There were 15 people working for it, and you can just tell the quality of people that worked there because of what they've gone on to do. Obviously, Kay Murray, ESPN host, Dan Thomas, ESPN host, Alex Aljo works for the Premier League, Rhiannon Jones has been doing good stuff as well in the UK. Loads, genuinely loads. Those are 4 that I was closest to, but there are lots of others, and we were doing good stuff. But the vision, shall we say, was a little bit narrow-minded, a little bit closed-minded, and the biggest club in the world didn't necessarily want to invest the money in the English-speaking TV show, and the main budget went for the main Spanish TV show. So, we kept doing less and less things. So I travelled all around Europe and indeed the US with Real Madrid, going to Champions League games, La Liga games, pre-season tours. We were covering loads of stuff, and then slowly we stopped travelling, we stopped doing shows, we stopped basically doing anything. So it's a real shame because there's huge potential, and I know there's a market for Madridistas out there who would really quite like to have the channel operating as it once was, but it's not going to happen. So but I've got great memories. 9 years there, and like I said, lots of good times. But then sort of progressively worse times because the budgets were cut and we were doing less and less, and by the end we were doing basically nothing. So I think it was a good time to leave.
Well, I was thinking, because you just brought back a lot of memories, because when I was a kid, when I was younger, Sid was also there as well. And so just thinking back to a lot of these commentaries that were done on Real Madrid TV, I remember you having some really fun commentary moments as well during the Champions League runs. And So
Yeah,
it was fun. Like it was a huge. I mean, you mentioned Kay
yeah,
and Dan. What did ultimately change? Because if I'm thinking like right now, if such a thing existed, it would do amazing for
I
English
know,
speaking
right?
fans.
Someone should someone should tell the club because uh, what changed? I guess like yeah, the desire to invest in the English version of Real Madrid TV wasn't there. The budget wasn't there to do stuff. So when we were doing extra time, which was the show on a Monday and a Thursday, then we only did it once a week, and then we stopped doing it. And then we stopped having guests coming in, so it was just me basically talking to a camera and throwing to videos. I mean, pretty basic stuff from where we once were. We did pitch side shows before games as well for like 2-3 seasons. We were in the stadium before games doing a pitch side show, which we streamed on Facebook and that kind of stuff. It was really cool stuff, which got a lot of interaction. But for some reason, I mean, I have to praise the club in terms of what they're doing on social media because they have invested in that aspect. And there's been a big improvement, I think,
Yeah,
anyway,
I
from what
agree.
they're doing on social media. I think most Madridistas, English-speaking Madridistas, would see that. But there is still, as you said, there's a market there for people to watch this channel, and they would like it. And but I don't ever think it's coming back. Certainly not how it was.
I mean, the Spanish side seems to be going strong. At least when I walk by press row, I see, the ex-players with the microphones and all that stuff behind them
Yeah,
doing some stuff.
I mean, going strong. I mean, they're still going, and because I used to do quite a lot on the Spanish version as well,
Mm.
because I was sort of in-house, and my level of Spanish is high enough to be able to broadcast in it. So I used to do stuff for them, and it was a little bit disheartening. Some of the audience figures because they put like a film on in the afternoon after the sort of lunch. They put like an afternoon, and that got quite good audience figures. And then we'd come on in the afternoon and do our show, and the audience figures went right down as soon as we came on. So that was a bit disheartening. I must say I haven't checked recently what the figures are, but it's not widely watched in Spain. I guess on match days, the pre-match show that they do, and if there's been a big game afterwards, like the post-match, they will get good viewing then. But it's difficult, isn't it, to do a 24-hour show, 24-hour channel rather on one specific theme. It's difficult. So they're doing their best, I guess.
I got it's true. I mean, even like our bosses here want us to do a daily podcast basically, and we're like,
Yeah.
we're okay, but like we're really scraping the barrel here. We're only talking about one team. Like there's only so
Yeah,
much.
I know.
Like yesterday, the Cristiano Ronaldo interview, we're like, oh yeah, thank God, give us some content. He's a past player. We can squeeze that in. It's
Yeah,
hard.
yeah, yeah. No, I
I
understand.
miss the
It is
Castilla
hard. It is
games the
hard.
most. That Real Madrid TV were great for that back in the day, and it's hard to watch Castilla
Yeah,
these days. Yeah.
absolutely. And that was just broadcast online all around the world. You could tune in and watch Castilla. I mean, we we did a lot of youth games. I used to commentate like the Benjamines, like the 8-year-olds
Yeah.
running around, which was probably a bit unnecessary. Don't necessarily need to be televised in that. Especially they were really good. They beat everybody.
Yeah.
So Real Madrid were winning like 20-0, and sometimes it was a bit hard on the other team. They'd start crying, or it was it wasn't the best. It
Heartbreaking.
didn't make for the best TV. Yeah. But the funny thing was I was in one commentary booth on my own, obviously, and then the Spanish version was in another commentary booth, and sometimes they'd have one commentator and two analysts for like an under-8s game or under-9s game, and every goal their directive is to commentate it like it's the Champions League final. So these 8-year-olds are scoring at 17-0, and it's goal, 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 still going for it. And I'm like kind of toned down, like, another goal, okay, And these guys really go for it. So, but yeah,
That's
no,
great.
Castilla was good, man. And now I find, like, having spent 9 years at Real Madrid TV and most of those years doing youth commentaries, there are loads of players who I know now and are Primera División players that I saw come through. So that was like a really good foundation and basis, because I wouldn't have been watching those players in those games otherwise. But yeah, that served me in good stead.
So we could transition to talk about the big tournament that's happening, I think, next week. It's called the World Cup or something. What's it like this time of year, by the way, for you? This is like one of the rare times of downtime for you in between.
What do you mean now that there's no
Yeah,
La
just like
Liga?
this 1 week that
Yeah.
there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean this 1 week is pretty chilled. Usually now with working for La Liga TV and presenting every weekend their match day coverage, I'm away from home, as you said in the intro. I'm in Barcelona. I live in Madrid, but the studios are in Barcelona, so I've got to go up to Barcelona and spend all weekend in the studio, which is sort of kind of tough family wise. But now I've got 7 weekends where I don't have to go up there in a row, which is
Mm,
great.
yeah.
We are doing a show on a Wednesday, so I'm going up, but that's just up there and back in the day. So yeah, it's unexpectedly cool to have this little break. Obviously, we're still sort of trying to come to terms. I don't know if you guys have been discussing about your feelings to the World Cup and how you're approaching it. I guess, we're professionals. It's our job. We do love the World Cup. I personally have certain misgivings about how and where this is being staged, but I guess you've got to cover it. I'm not in a position to boycott it totally, but I think it's fair to say you can cover it while at the same time expressing your misgivings over certain aspects.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I mean, I saw the tweet that you guys put out on the thread on TSFB's Twitter account.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of the same boat for us, is that our job is to cover all of Real Madrid's players who are playing during the World Cup. And that's what we're going to do.
Hmm.
Me personally, my head's also, because like Diego asked me yesterday, like, what do I think about Iran's chances? And I like went on this huge tangent. Like, right now, we're not even
I
thinking
know,
about
right?
football.
Yeah,
There's so much
yeah,
happening. And then you have all the human rights issues in Qatar on top of this. So yeah, we just kind of approach it the same way you guys are, that we do our job. And
yeah,
we can also
yeah,
express our feelings towards the tournament and all that. Um, I read your article this morning, your latest column for Optus Sport, talking about Luis Enrique, and I thought it was really interesting. And from what I gather, I know that you guys, that I'm just pulling it up here, are you're admirers of Luis Enrique, right?
I mean, yeah. I admire, yeah. I mean, I'm not like super pro or super against him, but because, listen, what I admire about him, I admire his pugnacious and sort of the way that attitude and the way he wants to take on the press here. Because when you live and work here in Spain every single day in, day out, and you see the way that certain things are covered by certain aspects of the press, when somebody comes along and is just like, you know what, I'm not having it from you guys, bit like Mourinho did for Real Madrid. It's kind of like, yeah, good on you, because there's a lot of people talking a lot of nonsense in this country a lot of times. So in that aspect, I admire him. I think as a football coach, I don't think his quality is questionable, really. Is a fantastic coach, one of the best. He's one of the best managers in the tournament of the World Cup. If you look each country, who is their manager, I think
No
Luis
doubt.
Enrique is one of the best managers there.
So you said a lot of interesting things in the article, and by the way, like the whole, because you did mention about how the country seems to be divided based on, are you a Real Madrid supporter, and Lucho's call ups and all of that. And I personally, I don't know if there's necessarily an anti-Madrid bias. I think he has just a very, very interesting view of his squad selection and which players he values. And if you look at, like, to me, if you look at a lot of the omissions that people are complaining about, to me, the omissions are not Real Madrid players. Like, I'm thinking about Mikel Merino, Sergio Canales, people like that. And, look, Sergio Ramos.
Here in Spain, here in Madrid, I have not heard anyone complain about Mikel Merino, as they should have. No one's saying anything about Bryce Mendes, which they definitely should have. But lots of people are talking about Sergio Ramos.
Sure.
I promise you.
I suppose, my lens is different from the Madrid
I'm
lens,
telling
but
you.
yeah. I often do wonder, like, what's there's a big what if Ramos doesn't get injured at the end of that, I guess 2020 season, I think it was, or towards the tail end of whatever his last season at Real Madrid was. This is a whole different trajectory, because no way you can drop him if he doesn't get injured. And if you don't drop him for that World Cup, or for that Euros, what happens for the rest of this timeline?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think, March 2021 when he played his last game for Spain. And not only was he not getting dropped, he was getting brought on for a few minutes to get an extra cap to get closer to the record. Like, Luis Enrique was actively encouraging him. They seemed super close in that respect. And then And then he's spent a lot of time without playing football. A lot of time. I mean, at his age as well, we're talking nearly a year without playing proper football is it's complicated. But had he not got injured there, he would have been playing at the Euros, at this World Cup as well. I've no doubt about that.
Isn't it crazy too? Because at that time they were thinking about like, oh, Ramos is playing too many games. He wants to go to the Olympics as well. And then just everything changed. Everything changed for him. He left Real Madrid. It's just a completely different timeline. Do you feel like
should have taken the deal, Sergio? Should have taken the deal that Uncle Florentino offered you. Should have taken it.
In hindsight, I think there are definitely several players who shouldn't have left Real Madrid for their own sake. Do you feel like there's a hint of like if you take him to Spain, it's kind of like if Aragonés had taken Raúl to his squad in 2008, where it's like you have to play him. He's a distraction. You can't just put him on the bench. Do you feel like there's an element of that there?
I think that's one of the major reasons why he's not taking him, genuinely, because in terms of footballing ability, I don't watch the French league, but he's been playing, apparently, playing well, playing regularly. He's fit, and a fit and healthy Sergio Ramos, even at the age of 35, can definitely bring something to any squad, anywhere, even if it's not starting. But him being Sergio Ramos and this being Spain, it also brings with it a lot of other things as well, a lot of baggage, which Luis Enrique, being the person that he is as well, being the personality that he is, wants to avoid. And he's all about the group, right? He is all about the team, the squad, not the individuals. He doesn't have a stronger starting 11. He doesn't have a first 11, does he? Like you could name a few players that he likes and will probably pick, but you can't name his starting 11 because I don't think he's about that. I think he's about having a group of players and each one can play in any given position in any given game. But if you've got Sergio Ramos in the squad, then he just has to start because he's Sergio Ramos. And I guess that kind of takes away from his idea as well.
Like, I do think that I wonder if that's a hindrance, the fact that we don't know and he doesn't know who his best 11 is yet. And we're heading into the World Cup. There's like, I suppose it's hard to plan for in some way if you're the opponent, but there's no like, okay, so this is what we are. This is our best 11. I wonder if that's a hindrance.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's all about having like a style and a way of playing and having players that can fit into that style, which is why he wants, ball playing centre backs and not necessarily Nacho, etc. So in terms of not having that starting 11, he's got a style and he's got people who can play to that style, and then he's got certain people that he thinks will play better in certain games. But yeah, if I was a manager, and I'm not a manager and I wasn't a very good footballer, but if I was a manager, I would like to have a clearly defined first 11 in my eyes, and then players that can come in and help me out in certain ways. That's what I do, but I trust Luis Enrique because I genuinely think he's a very good manager and he's won a lot of stuff. So let's see.
I think he proved his case also during the Euros when they played really well after a lot of criticism on the squad selection. But you had something in here that I thought was bang on, where you said, quote, Spain could go out in the group stages or reach the semifinal and neither will be a massive shock. I said that literally word for word yesterday on the podcast, that like the floor and the ceiling of this team is just, there's so much variance. And I think it's just unknown. It could completely tank. It could also beat any team in the world. And that's where we have no idea. If you look at the qualifiers, if you look at the Nations League, every starting 11 was different. It was completely random in our eyes, although to him, there's obviously a method. He doesn't care what people think, which is the correct stance to take if you're the coach of a team like this. And there's just so many unknowns. I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly would not be shocked if they won the World Cup. I would not be shocked if they somehow lost against Japan as well in the group stages and something bad happened.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the group actually could be tricky for them. Like we know Costa Rica will just sit back, play super defensive and make it very difficult for them to get any space, and Spain struggle against teams like that. Japan probably something similar, but perhaps even more organized with better attacking players, and then Germany. So actually the group it's not a foregone conclusion that they get out of the group. I mean, that first game against Costa Rica is vital, absolutely vital. if if they don't win that, they're in serious trouble. But yeah, just going back to what you said, I mean, even at the Euros, like the margins were pretty fine, man. Like they drew the first two games, didn't they? And they weren't great in those first two games. And then in the knockouts, it was kind of against Croatia. You had the pretty crazy game that went extra time against Switzerland as well. I mean, it was all pretty, yeah, fine margins. So yeah, even then, even like their greatest success could have been so different. So yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with Spain?
In our few remaining minutes, we can't have an entire podcast with Phil without talking about Uruguay and Fede Valverde. So my question is, where does the Uruguay love come from? Is it in your DNA? Is it in your blood? Or is it just a different kind of fascination that just arose somehow?
Yeah, it's a valid question, Kiyan, because I'm certainly in no way Uruguayan in terms of my heritage, and I've not even been there. I guess my love and fascination for Uruguay stems from the fact that I think if you love football, you kind of got to admire, at the least admire Uruguay and what they've done and how they have overachieved, sitting as they do in between two absolute giants of world football, Brazil and Argentina, massive countries, massive footballing countries, and tiny, tiny Uruguay is there in between them, competing and often beating them, being the most successful team in the history of the Copa America up until recently, winning World Cups a long time ago, but still, and producing like all these really, really, I was going to say talented players. They are talented, but also just spirited, determined, and full-blooded players. The kind of players that fans like. Like if we know that Madridistas like players to run around and show that they've got spirit. They're into it, right? That's what Uruguayans do. Like every Uruguayan, wherever they are fully committed to a team. So I'm kind of obsessed with the fact that this tiny little country in between two massive places can just do so well. And then when you dig into it a little bit, you find how just obsessed they are by football, how it just permeates every aspect of their existence, how it kind of like defines them as well as a nation. And yeah, I'm rooting for Uruguay big time, and Fede Valverde is the man. And I've been saying it for a while. I remember when he came to Real Madrid to begin with, and we didn't know what his best position was, where he was going to play, how he was going to play, what kind of place he had in this squad. I remember a long time people thought that he was just a natural backup to Casemiro. You guys have spoken about Fede Valverde a lot on the podcast. You don't need to say anything, but I'm very pleased to see him take that next step up. And it's not just about the footballing stuff as well with him. I think, he's done a lot of work off the pitch with a personal coach in terms of his mental visualization of reaching the top. He's looking after himself better physically. He's the fastest player in this Real Madrid squad. He is so unbelievably quick and powerful and has so much potential physically. And he's reaching that now. He's terrifyingly young as well, so he's going to be around for a long time. And he's just an extraordinary player. And like I said, one that fans can get behind. I'm not a Real Madrid fan, but I think fans can get behind this guy because he's just going to give everything in every game, and people love that. Do you remember it was like the most Uruguayan thing I've ever seen, like his foul in the Super Cup against Atleti.
Morata.
Was it the first Super Cup, right, on Morata? And he was going to be through, and Valverde rugby tackles him, and I was just like, man, what a guy. So yeah, that's a little bit of an explanation as to why I love Uruguay and why Fede Valverde is such an important player for me.
That tackle, I mean, I remember we did a segment on like, what is everyone's moment? Like Ramos has his 92-48 moment, everyone has like a moment, like a Real Madrid legend has their moment. Fede already has a moment. Like when we think about Fede, we think about that image of him slide tackling Morata, taking the red card. It was literally the best red card you can get. Like it's like the most logically sound red card that is like completely acceptable. Yeah, you take the red card. That was a good decision.
It was beautiful. It was a beautiful red card. It's still like the picture of him grabbing onto Morata is still like
WhatsApp profile group of a group that I have with a
Amazing.
friend, loads of Real Madrid friends, because is a big thing. But he's going to get more moments as well, man. Like that's the moment at the moment. But I don't know the goals that he's scoring.
Yeah.
He's gonna be doing big things for a while.
You could argue he's already had bigger moments than that. Some of his goals have been absolutely insane. One last question. I know you're pretty big on providing betting tips, and you kind of know what the odds are for certain things. Anything catch your eye for the World Cup that is a good bet?
So Sid and I have put money on Uruguay to win at 50-1. Like, I don't think that's a good bet, but I don't know what the North American odds like. That might be like plus 5,000, I think.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good bet, but it's an emotional bet, and it's one we do every year. Every year, every 4 years, every World Cup. I had a look at the first goal scorer, not the first goal scorer, the top goal scorer odds, and I like Vinicius at 33-1. So that's like
that's pretty good.
3,000 plus 3,300. Given the form that he's in, it's 21 goals for club and country this year. Scored in Champions League final. He's got those big match credentials. I don't know. I think I could see him doing something big in this World Cup. And some guys who I know are professional gamblers like the look of Germany a lot at plus 1,200, I think, at 12-1. But that might just be because the guys I know are British, and British people or English people have this sort of fear of the Germans. The Germans are just going to win. They're just going to win whatever. They're going to find a way to win. So I don't know if it's based on logic, but yeah. So the only bet I make though every 4 years is Uruguay to win, and one of these years it's going to happen.
One of these years it's definitely going to pay off. I mean, I don't know if you saw Fede Valverde top score 151-1. Is that a terrible bet? It's not bad.
I mean, it sort of is a terrible bet, but I mean, at the same time, it's a bet that I would like. Like that's my kind of bet, you know.
Low risk.
Darwin Nunez is 50-1, which might be a little bit more. But yeah, Fede. Thing is, like when you're looking for like a top goal scorer bet, you have to like think how hard is their group and how far are they going to go in the competition. And Uruguay have got a pretty difficult group with South Korea, Portugal, and Ghana. So they might not even get out of the group, and they might not go that far. But yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? I don't think it's going to be Alvaro Morata. I think he's 40-1. I think that plus 4,000.
I would take Fede over Morata.
Plus 400. Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe.
Listen, I think I've abused your time long enough. I used to. Yeah, we can keep going. So I was gonna say, like, I used to like just say, I'll see Phil in Spain. I barely see any of the TSFP crew because you're in Barcelona now for every weekend. Sid's usually pitch side, and I see Al the most. Al, I see it's always great running into him, but like I'm like, I'll just see the TSFP guys in person. But now we have to like actually schedule Zoom calls to see you guys. So,
yeah. You know, I don't get to go to games anymore, man. I try and go midweek, and if there's a Friday or a Monday game that I can get to, I will. But it's difficult. Like I do miss it. There's nothing quite like going to see a live football match, and obviously you're fortunate enough to be able to come over and get to the Bernabeu quite a lot. But I know there's a lot of listeners, Real Madrid listeners, who have never been to a live La Liga game and never been to a Real Madrid game, and it is something truly special. I worked at the Bernabeu for 9 seasons, and honestly, I've been there so many times, and it is genuinely pretty special every time you go there. So now I haven't been there for. The last game I was at was the Man City Champions League semi-finals. So I mean, that was pretty good.
Wow.
That was just the most.
That was the last one before the
just that run, man. Because I was there for PSG as well, and just that run was just so irrepeatable. Like that's never going to happen again like that. So it's going to be special when I go back because I haven't been for a while. So looking forward to it.
we can expand this to the entire league. It doesn't have to be a Real Madrid related item, but what has been the biggest surprise or biggest story for you this season in the league up until now? It's not quite the halfway point. It's kind of like a weird winter break, but what has been the biggest surprise for you?
Yeah, there's a few in terms of like storylines and teams overachieving. I mean, I don't think we should um, underestimate just how ridiculous it is that Sevilla are in the relegation zone. I mean, that is, you could readily assume that they weren't going to be as strong as they were last season, having lost their two first choice centre backs. And you could think, well, maybe Monchi's going to come out and the people who he brings in are going to be able to fill the boots of Koundé and Diego Carlos. But I don't think anyone expected it to go as badly as it has gone. And it has gone catastrophically, historically badly. So that's a big story. I think Sevilla being in the relegation zone, being potentially in a relegation battle, because I haven't seen any reaction from them under Sampaoli either. Like they're not playing better. Like they're not playing at all. So they've got a lot of work to do in this little break. I think on a more positive note, like teams like Osasuna are seventh. Didn't expect Osasuna to be flying like this, to be so. Well, I say that didn't expect them to be so competitive. You always expect them to be competitive, but like they've got players who are just like overperforming, or maybe not even overperforming, but just performing at a level that we didn't expect them to. And like youngsters like Aimar Oroz has come into the team, and obviously had never heard of this guy before, and he comes in and he's a brilliant addition. The two Garcias at centre back are like rock solid centre back pairing. So Osasuna are like a big surprise package. Real Sociedad a third as well. Did not see that coming at all. Thought they might be there or thereabouts, challenging for Europa League. I didn't even think they'd be challenging for a Champions League spot, and they might not come the end of the season. But for them to be here at the break, given the number of injuries they've had, you look at their injury list, and they've had like their first like 5 choice strikers or forwards out for basically the whole season, and they've somehow managed to do this. They're dirty, well, not dirty, but they are physical. They lead the league in fouls, so they're doing it like in a sort of not dainty little passing it around nice kind of fashion. They've got a lot more physical in it, and it's working for them. And yeah, I mean, those are like three standouts that like really surprised me. I didn't think Raya would be still as good as they are, and they're just doing more or less the same that they were doing last season, to more or less similar results. If you look at the number of points gained at this stage of the season, last season, it's pretty similar. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's been interesting. I've enjoyed these first 14 match days. There's been like lots of little storylines. I think you could like interesting stuff has happened to every team basically. And because I watch every single game, because I'm in a studio watching every single game, you know, you get to see basically everything, and form an opinion on everything. So yeah, there's lots going on all the way through the league. I mean, Atleti, we didn't even mention Atletico as well. I mean, did genuinely thought that they would have a good chance of pushing for the title. I thought, you know, last season was a bit of an aberration, bit of a slip. They've got a stronger squad now. They've got, you know, Griezmann back. I thought, bam, it would be a good season for them, and it's been really, 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 really poor. So yeah, I mean, there's been lots of stuff.
Just the thought that you watch every single La Liga game is mind-blowing to me. I mean, you're in studio, you do, and I know you guys have long days.
There's nothing else to do, Kiyan. Like, yeah, it's not out of choice. Like, I wouldn't necessarily on a Saturday afternoon sit and watch, you know, Elche, Getafe instead of going to the park with my boy, but because I'm there, like, you have to. So yeah.
How, like, because for me, when I watch games, I like to take notes, but if I'm watching more than one game a day, I kind of start turning my brain off and just kind of stare at the screen without really analyzing what's happening.
So, you know, my day at La Liga TV is we start at 1:00 Spanish time, and we do a 50-minute preview of what's coming at the day. And then the 2:00 game kicks off, and then we do like a halftime show. Then the 4:15 game kicks off, another halftime show. 6:30 games kick off, halftime show. Preview of the 8:30 game,
halftime show, and then we do a post-match show which starts at 11, and on Saturdays it's an hour, and on Sundays it's an hour and a half. By the time we get to the 11 o'clock show at night, I sometimes have forgotten what's happened in the first game of the day. Like, genuinely, you do write notes to sort of remind yourself what's happened. Yeah. I was like, what was the score? What happened? Because it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But yeah, it is what it is.
What's it been like working with Gary Lineker?
I haven't actually done too much with Gary.
At the beginning of the season, I think.
I did the Classico with him last season, but he hasn't been over this season yet, because he didn't come over for the last Classico. He's been going on Zoom, doing some Zoom calls, but that's, I think, on a Friday, and I'm only there Saturday and Sunday. So this season we haven't worked together, but we did work together last season in the studio, and it was great. I mean, I grew up as a Spurs fan, and I literally had a poster of him on my wall. As a kid, so it was nice. It was nice to work with him and to find that someone who you idolize as a kid is actually good, professional, and very personable. So no, it was a very positive experience.
Got it. Yeah, I'm a bit out of the loop because over here we get the ESPN feed. We don't get the La Liga TV feed. So
it's a shame that. Hopefully that will change in the future. Hopefully that will change in the future, but I don't know.
Yeah. Phil, listen, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Keep up the great work. I mean, I don't need to say it because everyone knows, but just in case there's that one guy who doesn't know, go to TSFP. They do awesome podcasts on Spanish football. They're covering the World Cup extensively during the tournament. You can find you can find Phil on La Liga TV. You can find him on TSFP. And I think your Twitter ad is at Phil Kitro. Is it that simple? Can't remember.
Yeah.
Kitro. Yeah, we'll include all that in the show notes as well. Phil, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure, man. No worries.
All right, before we let you guys go, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our patrons over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. If you pledge $10 or more, you not only get guaranteed responses to your questions, but you also get a specific shout out on the podcast, in addition to all the content, the bonus content we put over on Patreon. So shout out to these $10 plus patrons as follows: Brandon Alvarez, Willie Reed, Will Sousa, Wei Pairing, Wamik Jamal, Tobias Arroyo Botcher, Tarek Goktas, Talib Salhab, Tahmid Kalam, Sujai Wani, Sumanchu Singh, Sheikh Atiri, Shamil Shabaz Sharapov, Sergio Arispe, Santos Solorzano, Samuli Justin, Samer Z, Said Mahad, Sai Mohan Sasi Kumar, Rodrigo Balmaceda, Rishi D, Phoenix, Peter Powell, Paulo Fierro, Patrick Diafari, Oscar Barrera, Nico Laxo, Nicholas Moeller, Nick Ribeiro, Mowgli, MJ Diego, Michael Zinberg, Marin Myrtle, Matthew Atkins, Martin Ridman, Magnus Lext, Logan Stahl, Leon Stavronakis, Kunal Tilakar, Crystal Glass, Kevin Rivera, Jose Cruz, John Fernandez, Jason Fitz, Ian Marley, Graham Gerard, Gary Kohut, Frederick Rantakiro, Frederick Sundros, Faisal Hamdan, S.A. Davisito, Eloy Enriquez, Edward Sossman, Daniel Williams, Con P, Christian Toft, Christian Acosta, Charles Williams, Brendan Powers, Brandon Stevens, Ashik Bashar, Arnab Mukherjee, Armand Gashi, Armando L, Antons Rudenko, Anirudh Singh, Ananya Kumar, Alex Steiberg, Al Azaz Hussein, Adrian Rios, Adarza Lukovic, Adam Dorsey, Bella Chow, Varun, Ramtin Maghrur, Fabian Moreno, and Daniel Smith. We love you guys so much. Thank you for the support and being part of this family. And Hala Madrid.